Hey there, true believers. You're tuned into Baxter Building Radio via the Negative Zone feed, and you are listening to episode 43 of the Fantastic Four Fancast. My name is Nate Charles. I'm your host, and I do have a co-host. He is the Ben Grimm to my less intelligent Reed Richards. His name is Shane Murray. How you doing tonight, Shane?
I'm feeling better. It might not sound it, but it's like night and day since last week to
You
today.
sound awful.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
feel like $1 million.
I find that doubtful, but I'm going to take your word for it. You get hit with the flu.
If I was to take a guess, you'd have to go to the doctor to get that stuff verified, and obviously, I did not do that because I couldn't even get out of bed till Monday. I got home after work on Friday and then proceeded to lay down and proceeded to not leave my bed until I woke up to go to work on Monday.
Wow. That is the sickness, sir.
My legs hurt on Monday for the first couple hours because I was so not used to standing up. Get that like where you're laying sideways for too long thing.
Oh, geez. No, really fun. Sounds like you've had a time of it. I'm imagining you haven't really been able to do much else other than slowly convalesce.
Yeah, yeah. I did finish my backlog. And so, of course, I went today to the shop and made a bigger one.
Yeah, I was there when you were at the shop. The stack you ended up putting together was ridiculous.
Um, Yeah, and that's not including the stack of stuff I had to order because I didn't get to the shop and they were out the last time I was there. So,
How many books did you end up ordering today?
ordering?
Yeah.
Um, I didn't have to order anything today. I was able to pick it all up because I got there in a timely manner. Uh, Last time I had to place my order online, which I don't like doing. I like to support the local LCS instead, of course. It was like 9 books I had to order. 12. I got 12 today.
Dang, dude. I think that's bigger than my stack.
But I am in shotgun range of bringing home that TMNT #1.
Nice. Very cool. Where's that gonna go when you finally get it?
I have no idea. On the turtle shelf, but yeah, I'm so stoked for that.
I am stoked that you are stoked for it.
Um, but you also had an interesting week, right?
Sure, yeah. Oh, things have just been busy between buying a new car and doing physical therapy and prepping for the show in May. Just too much. It all blends together now. I wish I had more to actually talk about, but just everything is just so just I don't even know how to describe it. It's just I have lost all concept of time and space. But you know who else loses all concept of time and space?
Um, Xavier.
Uh, sure. I was gonna go for the Impossible Man, who debuted in this week's issue that we are covering tonight. So this week we are covering Fantastic Four, Volume 1, Number 11 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Shane, as always, I hopped on to pricecharting.com prior to tonight's recording session and I looked up the values. Would you like to play the Price is Right with me one more time?
Sure.
All right. So, for a graded 9.8 copy of this book, how much do you think it has gone for?
Um, the Impossible Man. Um, 6,000.
6,000.
I don't know. It sounds right. Everything is so expensive with the Jack and Stan books.
Well, I will say that you are not over. You are under by a wide margin.
By a wide margin?
Yeah, so this book has at maximum value, and again, this is not overstreet value, but just maximum recorded value. Sold at a graded 9.8 for $20,416.77.
Okay. I guess that's fair. That seems about right. They're all -1. Everything's been right around there, right? Between 18 and like 22, it seems.
Fair amount of them, I want to say. How about an ungraded copy?
Um, 650, $650.
$161.58. You were
That's
over.
actually that's
You
actually
lost.
reasonable. I was not expecting it to be reasonable. I'm sure it's missing like a page, doesn't have a cover.
So the creative team for this week's issue, we have got writer Stan Lee, penciler Jack Kirby, inker Dick Ayers, colorist Stan Goldberg, letterer Artie Simic, Stan Lee, editor-in-chief. Shane, will you go ahead and take us through the cover?
Which cover am I taking us through? Actual Impossible Man or the actual cover?
Wait, what do you mean the actual cover?
Because we're doing Alpha Flight this week.
No, we talked about this the other night. We were switched it over to 11. I remember I called you.
No, you said you wanted to switch over. I said no. I think four is perfect.
Oh shit. I completely misunderstood. Then I need to actually read.
That's why I asked you if you read it. This
I thought you were talking. I had expressed how I don't like The Impossible Man. I thought you meant that I read this. Oh, yeah. Okay, I gotta read this book.
no, it's fine. I can do Impossible Man. You're good. I can do it.
April Fools, I read the book.
Oh, you fuck.
And that's how the explicit check mark gets hit on this podcast. So even though we are recording this episode on March 19th, it is dropping on April 1st, as you all well are aware. So yeah, I know on last week's episode we had said that we were covering Fantastic Four Volume 1, number 11. However, this week instead, we are covering something different. And what is that, Shane?
Alpha Flight number 4.
And as you said, this was your choice, sir. So why are we covering Alpha Flight number 4 this week? Take me through the steps that brought you to wanting to cover this book.
So I've been reading Alpha Flight on lunch as something to do, so I don't have to ruin books, because I have it right there on the phone. I hate bringing stuff and leaving it in the car because the weather affects it. And we don't really have like giant lockers to put stuff in at work. So I've just been reading Alpha Flight because it's fun. At least I find it fun. And I opened up this book initially and it opens with Sue. And I was like, oh man, wouldn't that be hilarious to do for an April Fool's joke? Because Sue and Namor take like they're a pretty big part of this random Alpha Flight story.
Sure, I guess. All right, well, as always, I had hopped on to pricecharting.com prior to our recording session tonight, Shane, and I did look up the values of this book as what it has sold for. Would you like to once again play The Price is Right with me?
Yeah.
All right, so we have three different values tonight. I was able to get a graded 9.8 direct market copy, an ungraded direct market copy, and an ungraded newsstand copy. We'll start with the graded 9.8 for direct market. How much do you think this book is sold for?
Um, oh, $58.
You are over.
Oh,
$57.81.
So close.
Now we're
Barely,
playing the Price is Right, baby.
barely over. I was right in the range.
How about the ungraded direct market copy?
Oh, uh, $3 and like 50 cents.
You're under $4.62. And lastly, the ungraded newsstand copy.
Um, $5 and like 25 cents.
And over again,
Wow.
$2.07.
The newsstand's cheaper?
Yeah.
That's
If
never happens. It happened one other time. That's very rare.
Yeah, I mean, it is an ungraded newsstand copy. Honestly, Shane, I should have really thought about this a little bit more. I could have kept us on brand and could have, gotten us the prices Canadian.
That's funny. That's true.
And speaking of Canadians, the credits for this issue, writing, penciling, and inking duties were all handled by Canada's own John Byrne. Colorist was Andy Yankus, letterer Rick Parker, editor Denny O'Neil, and editor-in-chief Jim Shooter. Shane, would you like to hear a synopsis of today's issue?
I would love to hear a synopsis of today's issue.
Well, you're in luck because Marvel Unlimited has us covered. Alpha Flight has set off to find fellow teammate Marina, but what will become of them when they find a nefarious foe who professes to be the master of the world? Can Alpha Flight save Marina from the clutches of the master of the world, even with the help of the Submariner and Invisible Girl? And can Aurora be cured of her fractured personalities?
I think that whoever writes the synopsises for some of these books has a thesaurus next to them, and they're like, "Yeah, that word's too basic. Let's look up what this word could be more bombastic."
Oh, what's an example of that there, Shane?
What's that first sentence of that synopsis again?
Alpha Flight has set off to find fellow teammate Marina, but what will become of them when they find a nefarious foe who professes to be the master of the world?
There you go, right there. Nefarious and professes. They could have used much simpler terms, much
Villains are
simpler yeoman.
nefarious or nefarious or
Yeah,
however
but
you want to pronounce it.
they are, but there's yeoman terms for that also. I do like I'm pretty sure like the people who write synopsises are like, I have a doctorate in English. I must make this sound smarter.
Yeah, you're right, Shane. It would sound so much more exciting if they said Alpha Flight is set off to find their teammate Marina, but what will become of them when they find a bad guy who says he's master of the world?
I didn't say it was going to be sound better. I said it's yeoman terms. It's not wrong. The synopsis isn't bad because it has bigger words. I'm just saying whoever writes them uses bigger words.
Yeah, you got to sell it, man. This is
Uh,
Alpha Flight. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Alpha Flight, but they're not the first book I'm grabbing off the rack.
well, that's a problem. They're still like the second book I'm grabbing off the rack. They're not my first. But yeah, pretty good synopsis.
So, the cover of today's issue was done entirely by John Byrne. Want to go ahead and take us through that tonight, Shane?
Absolutely. So you have Marina on this globe that she is fastened down to, where you have a hand underneath the globe pulling its fingers through the bottom, crushing it as it's falling apart, and her head's getting closer and closer to the hand as it looks like it's going to crush the globe and her in one foul swoop. And you also have a beautiful little corner box there with well, most of Alpha Flight. You got what? Sasquatch, Guardian, and Snowbird, and what I don't know what she's going by at this point. You have Aurora, and well, I always want to just call him her brother because he's got no personality.
North Star?
Yeah, I know it's North Star, but I always just,
The
he's like,
groundbreaking character of North Star?
The groundbreaking character of North
Yeah,
Star.
the groundbreaking character of North Star.
I don't know if he's, yeah, I guess.
The
He's
first
like,
homosexual character in Marvel Comics history. The first openly homosexual character in Marvel
oh,
Comics history.
fair enough, I guess. That I don't know. He's like the boring character for me on this in this book because there's so much personality in this book. And then there's him. Not, I meant like, I don't know about this specific issue, but like Alpha Flight overall has a lot of personality. And then there's North Star, and he's like Guardian 2.0. He's boring, which I really shouldn't say anything because, in case you didn't know, my phone background is literally Guardian
Huh.
from a splash page I found.
You I feel like you've betrayed our cause here, sir.
Why?
It's not the Fantastic Four. It's not even your favorite Ninja Turtles. It's Guardian,
It
the
is, it's
character who
Guardian.
you just went out of the way to say is like watching paint dry, unless he's North Star. And man, oof. Is that your April Fool's joke for me, or are you being completely
What?
serious right now?
North Star? North Star is by far my least favorite member of this team.
Who's your favorite?
My favorite member of this team? Probably Puck. It's between Puck and Snowbird. I really like Snowbird.
I find Snowbird to be a very interesting character. Anyway, do you have anything else to talk about on the cover?
No, 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 no. We're good.
All right, then we'll go ahead and move on to the inside, where we are greeted with a first page splash. And right at the top, we have the title of our story, Shane.
Yeah, resolutions.
And who greets us on this splash page, sir?
Oh, none other than Sue Storm herself. Don't worry, you're getting your Fantastic Four in, buddy.
And what's Sue doing? How is she dressed?
She is dressed in her like winter suit because where she's headed is freezing.
So by winter suit, Shane means she has a blue parka on, which has the Fantastic Four's four logo over top of the right portion of her chest. And she
Are
also
we
has some fuzzy gloves.
are we gonna call that a parka? Because like it looks like it just comes up short of the gloves. It looks like a weird Santa suit in blue.
And you would know about Santa suits, wouldn't you?
I would.
And she is at the controls of her portion of the Fantastic Car, and she says, "Explain it to me again, Namor. Why am I chasing all over the North Pole with you when I should be home trying to contact my husband and tending to the Silver Surfer?" Icy winds whip past her at more than 40 miles an hour. It is summer in the Arctic, but even through her insulated costume, the cold stabs at Susan Storm Richards, the invisible girl. And we get an editor's note from Denny O'Neil, which reads, "No readers, John hasn't confused Alpha Flight with the Fantastic Four. Bear with us." And we turn the page, and who enters the scene flying in front of Sue?
None other than Namor.
"You're here for the simple reason that I asked you to be here, Susan. And you know that the Submariner does not crave the aid of any human, not even you, unless the need is dire indeed. Now, be alert. We are nearing the area of ice cap over those waters I found most inhospitable." "Are you certain, Namor? How infallible is your navigation sense when you are out of water?" "Enough that I am certain whatever evils drove south the barbarian hordes lie near here, somewhere in the ice." And when did those barbarian hordes show up, Shane?
See Fantastic Four number 260.
And you can also find out why Sue was referring to tending to the Silver Surfer in that issue as well. Sue continues, "I'll take your word for it. But how can you tell one patch of ice from another? Wait, you're right, Namor." And she takes notice of the Fantasticar's navigation system. "My Fantasticar's sensors are picking up something beneath the ice cap. Something incredible, but something I can't seem to get a clear fix on. Oh, if only Reed were here. He'd be able to modify the scanner. get perfect resolution. But your husband is not with us. Do the best you can, Susan. Your best has ever been more than sufficient. Flatterer. Susan smiles as her slim fingers coax the controls. Then we see an image pop up on the Fantastic Car's sonar, and Sue says, "There. I'm afraid that's the best we can get, Namor." "It is enough. Fantastic. A complex of some kind. A technological structure beneath the ice. Inside the ice. Vast. But why do the edges seem to blur as if there's no sharp definition between metal and ice? That may just be the lack of clear. Wait, wait a moment. Energy reading. And what pops out from the ice, Shane?
This laser cannon that fires right at the Fantastic Car.
And the Fantastic Car explodes in a massive ball of flame.
Yeah.
3.5 miles away, just at that moment, the great white bear turns towards the blast. An unexpected intelligence shines in its clear eyes, and that bear, when turning towards the sky, makes a noise, Shane.
Urgh.
It stands before giant broken doors, buried in the ice and snow, and its animal senses, keener far than human, scan the area. It wonders in its slow, bare way if this distant explosion is in some way connected to the wreckage it found earlier, when it was not a bear. And it resolves in that instant that the time has come to be a bear no longer. Mystic energies swirl and flow. Bare flesh grows soft, slipping and sliding against no longer solid bone. Snowbird returns, and we see the bear shrink and then simultaneously begin to grow into the standing form of Snowbird. Can you describe to us, Shane, what Snowbird looks like?
Yeah. So snowbird. I almost said snowboard. Snowbird wears a white and light blue full body suit. The blue also goes into like a cape with the jagged edges, and it comes over off her shoulders, kind of like certain Batman capes do, but it also connects all the way down to her what do we want to call those? The outside trunks of the suit. So it's like a white bodysuit with like blue gloves, blue boots over top, and this blue trunks that goes into her cape that goes all the way up to her neck. And then she has a white headpiece that goes around the front of her head. And she has super blonde hair. And she's currently flying, at least.
And Snowbird thinks, there is much wrong here. Great evil in this place. Ancient evil. That explosion occurred not far from the wrecked Alpha Flight skyship I found not an hour ago. It is logical to assume the two events are in some way connected, but it is not now the time to investigate either. I sense my fellow members of Alpha are somewhere ahead, and though the evil in this place threatens to smother my mystical senses and overwhelm me, I must join them. And Snowbird flies in to the sunken complex and down through a very long curved corridor. Several levels below, who do we find, Shane?
We find Guardian with Aurora and Sasquatch. Guardian is trying to ease her back from her in the last issue, which isn't shown here. She ended up getting attacked by a bunch of the shards that are laying on the ground there.
While hovering over Guardian and Aurora, Sasquatch says, I think explanations are in order, Jimmy boy. What do you mean Aurora has retreated into her Jean Marie persona? Aren't they the same person? Not exactly, Sasquatch, but we've no time to waste talking. Then make time. We're not going anywhere until I understand more fully what's wrong here. I've known Aurora ever since you inducted me into Alpha Flight, and there's never been so much as a hint she was anything but a free-spirited mademoiselle. Now she's turned into the complete opposite, almost in front of my eyes. All right, well, I'll explain, but it's got to be the Reader's Digest version. Jean Marie is a classic paranoid, what people call a split personality. She thinks of her Aurora identity as someone else, someone she hates. And this is the kind of solid, stable material you consider suitable for superheroing? No. When I first met her, she was in her Aurora persona. I didn't learn the other side of her until it was too late. Now the trap we just rescued her from seems to have forced some kind of spontaneous regression, and Jean Marie is dominant again. Oh, my Tete, what has happened? Easy, easy. You're safe now, Aurora. You can. Aurora! Do not call me that name. Take your filthy paws off. I must get away. Away from Aurora. Oh, blast. Jean Marie! I'm sorry. Wait! Idiot, idiot, idiot. Even after explaining her problem to you, I instinctively called her Aurora. Exactly the wrong thing to do. I've got to get after her, and Sasquatch lays a hand on Guardian's shoulder and says, No, you said her brother Northstar could bring her out of it. You look for him. I've known her better than you. Wait. Oh, Walt, you don't mean. Ask me no questions, and I'll tell you no lies, Jimmy. Just get after Northstar. Thus, with a troubled backward glance, the man called Guardian launches himself deeper into the surrounding complex, as the man monster known as Sasquatch heads off in the opposite direction. And as he moves, his long loping gait changes, balance shifting, proportions altering, until, and we see Sasquatch slowly transform back into his human form and thinks, I may be able to reach through Jean Marie to Aurora, but I think I'll train better as plain old Walter Langowski, assuming I can find her without my blasted glasses. And Walt's a little unclad here, Shane.
Yeah, just a little. Just down into his briefs.
And Walt continues to think. And just to make matters worse, these corridors aren't constant. Somehow they keep shifting, altering direction, size, everything. It's as if the whole place is some kind of living organism. And if I don't find Aurora in short order, we'll both be hopelessly lost. But Walter turns a corner and he runs immediately in to who, Shane?
Jean Marie?
Who seems to be clutching at herself in a panic. And Walter tries to ease the tension. Ah, there you are. Don't be afraid, Jean Marie. You remember me, don't you? I'd never hurt you, would I? That is not for me to say, monsieur. I am not in the habit of associating with naked men. And Walt thinks, incredible. A totally separate personality. Even her accent has changed as if she's having trouble with English. I'm hardly naked, Jean Marie. In fact, there are beaches in this country where I'd be considered overdressed. Now, please come with me. We must get back to the others. Do not touch me. I don't want to see the others. I want to know where I am and why I'm here. Jean Marie, please, you must listen to me. His words are calm, his deep voice slow and soothing. When he reaches out his hand, his touch is gentle, hardly threatening. He speaks of moments they have shared, a night in New York weeks before. He speaks of intimacy, two people sharing something more than friendship, if not entirely love. His words are kind, calming, evoking in her not at all the disgust she would have expected of herself. Slowly, oh so slowly, she remembers. But she remembers as Jean Marie. And what happened, Shane?
Oh, one of my favorite moments happens in this book, which is where she just turns around and just wallops this guy with a backhand right across the face.
Animal! And Walter thinks, blast. Obviously, this isn't going to be as easy as I'd hoped. Meanwhile, who do we find zipping through the corridors of this complex?
Oh, none other than North Star.
And he thinks to himself, this is pointless. I have raced through what must be 500 miles of corridors without a sign of Aurora, and these wretched halls never look the same twice, even though I am sure I have retraced my path several times. Face facts, Jean Paul, you are very lost. But who suddenly lands next to North Star?
Guardian lands next to North Star.
Welcome, North Star. I was beginning to think you'd never get here. Guardian? You followed me here? It's just impossible. Not entirely. I cheated. I used the cybernetic circuitry in my supersuit to tap into the internal systems of this complex. It speaks some sort of incomprehensible gobbledygook, but I was able to pinpoint all our locations and find you. All of us? Then you know where my sister is. You can help me find her? I could, but I think there are more pressing matters for us to attend to just now, North Star. Aurora is safe with Sasquatch right now, but unless we act, she won't be safe for long. None of us will be unless we move quickly. You speak in riddles, Guardian. What are you talking about? I'm talking about what I think I've discovered to be the purpose of this complex. Unless we shut it down, it'll mean the extermination of all life on Earth. Several minutes earlier, who do we see escaping the explosion of the Fantastic Car?
Namor with Sue in his arms.
Namor says. That was almost too close, Sue. Don't quibble about timing, Namor. That ray may have destroyed the Fantastic Car, but I was able to throw an invisible force field around us and shield us from the blast. Indeed. Drop the field now, Susan, so that we may land properly. And they touch down in the snow, and Namor takes a huge fistful of it and says, it is as I thought. The evil that has infected the waters of this region also corrupts the ice and snow. You're right. I can feel something wrong, something missing in the ice. We must discover what it is. Stand back, Susan. As aerial approach did us no good, we must get under the ice. And Namor rips a huge chunk of ice out of the glacier upon which they stand. Quickly now, Susan. We must find the complex you scanned and gain egress before I am again overcome by these poisoned waters. Do we dare risk it, Namor? If you should succumb, well, forgive my slightly selfish attitude, but that would leave me in hot water. And Namor takes Sue by the hand and then lifts her overhead as she forms an invisible force field bubble around herself before diving into the waters. Then, if you worship any gods, Susan, I suggest you offer up a prayer to them. We are committed. For several long minutes, the two travel through icy darkness like explorers in some unguessed depth of starless space. Then, how's Namor looking, Shane?
He's not looking good. He's looking like he's been a little beat up, tired even.
I grow steadily weaker, Susan. I fear I may have failed you. But Sue, inside her force bubble, pulls down the hood of her parka and says, Namor, no, look. And what has Sue seen, Shane?
She has seen this underwater building slash ship slash facility of some sort that has bubbles that you can look out from, and it is very alien shaped. Doesn't look like it's man-made in any way, shape, or form.
This reminds me of a Mobius drawing, if I'm being quite honest with you. I'm not sure how familiar with Mobius you are. He did a Silver Surfer book with Stan Lee back in the day, but his sci-fi architecture always had a very particular look to it that I feel like this really evokes. So I would love to know if John Byrne was channeling Mobius as an influence here.
Um, I will have to look that up one day. I'm not super familiar with that. I'm much more familiar with like obviously Jack and John and Denny.
And Namor exclaims, Neptune's trident! It is bigger than even I'd imagined. Within seconds, Namor and Sue surface within this craft. Fantastic. This complex must somehow be feeding on the waters, drawing vital elements out of them, rendering them deadly to members of my race. I think you may be right, Namor. Everything about this place suggests a living thing, a growing thing. We've got to discover who's behind this place and what its purpose is. Thus, Sue turns both herself and Namor invisible and takes Namor by the hand, leading him through the complex. Not so fast, if you please, Susan. It is most unnerving to be rendered invisible. Try not to think about it, Namor. Just move naturally. That's what I do. We need my invisibility power to get us into this complex without, I hope, being detected. And some 40 minutes later, the invisible Sue and Namor happen upon a peculiar scene, Shane. And what is it?
Well, going back to the cover, you have Marina bound by her arms and legs with all these instruments of torture obviously poking and prodding her while the master looks over her.
Now, you say the Master. The full name of this character is the Master of the World. Can you do me and the listeners a favor and describe what the Master of the World looks like?
Sure, sure. So the master of the world is in a black suit with a silver helmet with a red V on the front of it, has a beard that has is black with two gray stripes coming down to make it look like he has a gray Fu Manchu inside of his beard, and has a red cape slash almost like poncho cape draped over his shoulders and across the front of him. And he is sitting in a chair.
And the Master says, You continue to resist the probes, little Marina, even though I have told you to do so is useless. Why, why do you torture me? You told me this ship did the same to you 40,000 years ago. Why do you inflict such agony on another living being? And Sue thinks to herself, Ship? But the master continues, Marina, I have told you who I am, how I came to be master of this, your ship. Why do you insist on pretending not to know the purpose of this place? Let me demonstrate the futility of this. Let me prove to you I already know what you seek to keep concealing from me. Lost in the vast, immeasurable outer reaches of space, deep in the endless sea of time, a planet, a dying planet, its resources spent, its every acre crammed with civilization, its moons and nearest neighbors colonized. A planet harboring a race whose very existence is dedicated to conquest, to seizing and holding of land. In wave after interminable wave, the colony ships leave the captured worlds, for each new planet is quickly stripped bare, fodder for the machinery of constant expansion. 1,000 worlds are seized and colonized. Each of those takes 1,000 more, each of those 1,000 more. 100 such generations, and a whole galaxy can be sucked dry. And these worlds that we see, don't even have land masses on them. They just all look to be cities, I guess, Shane.
They just look like cities that just keep floating through space.
And we see those wave of colony ships leave and arrive on new, uncolonized worlds filled with unspoiled foliage and fauna. And what is the method of colonization? The ships are programmed to seek worlds in the early stages of development, savage, primitive worlds. They land in a region judged most inhospitable to the native fauna. Landing, the ship actually grows, drawing elements from the soil, the water. Within 100 years, the ship has ceased to be a ship. It is a massive colonization complex, completely insinuated into the planet's fiber. Then a strange hypnotic signal radiates out, calling every life form on the planet, summoning one of each. And we see one of these life forms, Shane. Can you describe it for us?
Yeah, it is a tall, green, alien looking, I wouldn't quite say humanoid, but it is standing on two legs. Has a very like praying mantis head with red eyes and super long arms, judging by its like leg size there. The arms almost touch the ground. It looks like a praying mantis meets like a long-armed orangutan.
I was going to say some sort of primate.
Yeah.
The one that survives the long trek through the hard lands is deemed representative of the dominant life form. That hapless creature is butchered, its very molecular structure cracked and analyzed. The information is fed into the colony spores, millions of egg pairs, blank slates upon which is now written the genetic code of the dominant life. And we see inside these breeding chambers as coded information is relayed into these eggs. Thus conditioned, the indestructible egg pairs are ejected, fired on ballistic paths that will carry them to every corner of the doomed planet. Not all will survive their hatching. Not all will find their mate and be able to breed, but there are millions. And on as many different worlds, they have successfully adapted to countless life forms, assuming thus domination of the planets. And we see some of these life forms, Shane, probably a good dozen here on this second panel on this page. I'm going to give you a break. Describe your favorite one.
Um, I mean, I can describe more than one if you really want, but my favorite one is going to be the one all the way to the left. I think maybe, I don't know, it reminds me very much of like the Geonosians from Star Wars, but it's taller and it has claws, but like the way the mask looks or the way the beak slash nose comes out with the teeth that come around it and the black eyes, it reminds me of that. But like the one next to it looks like a Pokemon. There's literally a Pokemon that looks exactly like that with like almost the same thing. It's just instead of being yellow, it's blue. The one that really weirds me out of any of these, I think, is the one that's like the bubble with the yellow spots going through it
See,
and
that one's my favorite.
all of the tentacles. I'm it reminds me of like intelligence devourer.
It reminds
So,
me of the Hanar from Mass Effect, quite frankly.
fair.
Moving along, that would have happened here, but for an inexplicable flaw in the colony ship. After 10,000 years in space, one of its drive units exploded, and we see this ship with one of its engines flying over the North Pole, and it's leaving a trail of smoke. It did not land on this Earth of ours. It crashed. And damaged in that crash, it fired off its precious cargo before they were fully ready, before genetic programming had occurred. And we see millions of eggs fly from this crashed cargo ship. Thus, the creature occupying the egg forced open by Gladys Smallwood was still primed for conditioning. And we see Gladys Smallwood, an older lady, cracking open one of these eggs. And when did that first occur, Shane?
That first occurred in issue number 2.
And in the instant that small, undefined creature made contact with human cells, it adapted itself, mimicking the form and functions of a human female. But a random element had been introduced. For 40,000 years, the egg had drifted across the ocean's vast and shifting floor. To survive all those centuries, this egg became water permeable, and the monster in it became amphibious. That monster, Marina, was you. Of all the millions of eggs launched 400 centuries ago, it seems that only yours survived, damaged though it was. But your programming was not damaged, Marina. You are still a brood female, and your purpose is still to colonize this world. No, no, I know nothing of what you say. Please, I am no alien monster. I am human. Human! No, you are not, little Marina. If that were true, I could not have summoned you here. Nor would you have attacked and nearly killed a human upon receiving that call. And when did that occur, Shane?
Also issue number 2.
And now, in order that I may assume my rightful position as master of the world, the time has come for you to die. What? And who interrupts the master's proceedings, Shane?
Oh, Namor and Sue.
Namor flies down from above, his arm wrapped around Sue that he carries along with him, and says, Hold, master! Namor of Atlantis forbids this action. You've got a lot more explaining to do than that sci-fi opus. A lot more. Submariner and the Invisible Girl. I had not expected so soon to come in contention with the likes of you, but you will find the Master is not unprepared. And the Master points at the two heroes, and what happens?
Two different mechanical arms reach out at them. One has like a grappling hook, looks like it's about to grab Namor, and the other one has like these tentacle like stuff coming out of it trying to apprehend Sue.
Namor exclaims. Mechanical grabbers! They seem to grow right out of the walls. Of course. Remember what he said, Susan. This ship is some high order organism, able to grow at his command. And Namor begins to struggle with the claw grip that has come at him. You're beginning to sound like Reed, Namor. Don't waste energy on explanations. My force field seems to be confusing these tentacles. But we must stop the Master himself. As if on cue. What happened, Shane?
So the master starts to go into the ground.
The time has come to retreat and regroup. So far, everything is going exactly according to plan. But I must give these heroes the illusion they control their own destiny, or all is lost. Farewell, little Marina. Know that what occurs now is for the good of all mankind. And what happens to Marina, Shane?
So Marina in this panel is got a it's like a giant. It kind of reminds me of the hydraulic press, except instead of pushing down to smush her, it's pushing against her back and pushing against the fact that her arms and legs are in braces. It's like trying to rip her apart from the middle.
Yeah, she's effectively being drawn and quartered here. And she screams, No, no, help me! I'm being torn apart! At that moment, from a nearby circulation duct, what occurs?
A big swarm of bugs comes out of the circulation duct.
The mosquitoes swarm, buzzing across the great chamber. Then, miraculously, the mosquitoes come together to form a person. And who is it, Shane?
It is none other than Snowbird.
who reaches down and smashes the shackle on Marina's left arm and says, "Fear not, Marina. Sasquatch is not the only one with strength. Snowbird!" And Sue, still using her force field to hold off the tentacle, says, "Snowbird, then Alpha Flight is involved in this." And Snowbird scoops Marina up in her arms, it says, "Susan Richards and Prince Namor, you take me quite by surprise. Indeed, my fellow Alphas are involved. Are the rest of the Fantastic Four with you?" Questions later. Sue responds, "Help us smash these grabbers. We have to go after the Master." And nearly 10 miles away, we see the Master still seated in his throne, though now it is attached by its top to a monorail like structure that zooms down one of the corridors. And the Master says, "All systems are responding as expected. Even now, Guardian and Northstar are being subtly guided. Within minutes, they should reach the Prime Power Complex. Now!" And there is an explosion, Shane, and it makes a sound.
Boom!
It begins. At that moment, what do we see?
We see Guardian North Star come flying into the panel.
And they seem to be outrunning an explosion that is behind them. As Northstar exclaims, "Sapristi! Guardian, I think perhaps we broke too much of this place." "Not at all, Northstar. We had to do maximum damage to ensure we were knocking out vital systems. I'm still in cybernetic link with the complex, and whole areas are blanking out, going dark." And as they fly down the corridor, what do they run into, Shane?
They run into Sasquatch and Jean Marie.
I mean, you can describe what Sasquatch is too.
Oh, Sasquatch is holding Jean Marie against her will in one hand as he's trying to help get her out of this structure.
And Guardian says, "Sasquatch, I thought we'd find you along here." "I won't ask how you deduced that in this funhouse, Jimmy. Are you two responsible for the present disturbance?" "That we are, Squatch. I—" But Northstar sees his sister and interrupts Guardian. "Aurora, let her go, Langowski." And Northstar grabs Aurora by the arm, much to Jean Marie's dismay. "No, no, leave me alone." "Sacre bleu, she has become Jean Marie." "Very astute." "All right, can the banter, people. But who shows up to interrupt Guardian?
Snowbird and Marina with Namor and Sue.
Snowbird and Great Scott, what's going on here?" And Sue says, "You probably know as much as we do at this point, Vindicator." And we have an editor's note. And what does it say, Shane?
Sue is not aware of Guardian's name change.
Yes, prior to this, Guardian had been known as Vindicator in his initial appearances. A quick synopsis later, Sue says, "So we have to find the master. Hmm, he must be the other life form I've been scanning. He's quite a ways off, and I think we just ran out of time to look for him. It sounds like all the damage we've been doing is caught up with us." And we get a double page splash, and what do we see, Shane?
So from top to bottom, we see ice, like it looks like it's just the ice covered landscape. Then you see it shake a little bit with like you see the little breaking up coming up. Then you see in the middle of it a gigantic explosion where on the next that'd be panel 4 there you see all of the icebergs forming from where the explosion happened, and then you see the like the pieces of shrapnel falling back to the ocean on fire, and then you see finally it just go almost back completely to just surface level with a little bit of stuff floating around.
Yeah, an eerie stillness falls over the water. And then we turn the page to see Alpha Flight and Namor surface with Sue, who has wrapped them in an invisible force field. And Sasquatch exclaims, "Son of a gun, we made it!" And Namor follows up with, "Susan, quickly, open your force field bubble." And Sue does so and leaves an invisible platform for them to float on the surface of the waves and says, "Done, Namor, but the Master, Susan. There is a chance he survived as we did. I must search for a trace of him." "Submariner, wait, let me come with you," says Marina. 20 tense minutes later, both Namor and Marina surface. Nothing. No sign of him at all. And no sign of the complex, not even wreckage. It's as if it dissolved into the ocean waters. "Then our task here is done," says Snowbird as she launches herself into the air. "I must return to my civilian guys. Farewell, Alpha Flight." And Guardian grabs Marina's hand and helps her out of the water onto the invisible platform and says, "Take care, Snowbird. Keep in touch." "She's a cold one, isn't she? So cool and dismissing," says Sue. I I think we should be going too now, don't you, Prince Namor?" says Marina, much to Guardian's confusion. "Going? Your Highness, what?" "There are many questions yet surrounding Marina, Guardian. My people are best suited, I think, to solve them. I have invited Marina to come and dwell for a time in Atlantis, and she has agreed." "Well, if that's all agreed on, before we go our separate ways, I need a lift back to New York. That isn't out of your way, is it, Namor?" "Not at all, Sue. Let the rest of Alpha Flight depart. Then you can dispense with this force field, Raph, and we'll be on our way. Good luck, Marina. We'll miss you." And Guardian grabs Sasquatch from beneath the armpits and takes off into the air, while North Star carries what I believe is the now unconscious form of Aurora. So, another day, another supervillain sent to his just reward. I think we can safely mark this one as closed. I wouldn't be so quick to write off the Master, Walt. And don't close this case just yet. I've got one unenviable task to take care of before we head home. The twins, and by that they mean Aurora and North Star, arc towards La Belle Province. Guardian's course continues eastward until, on the rugged, rocky coast of Canada's youngest province, Newfoundland, we see Guardian, now in his civilian guise as James Hudson, accompanied by a now clothed Walter Langowski, approach a man who is sitting on a rock of the beach, and Guardian yells his name. "Dan Smallwood." "Hmm? Oh, Dr. Hudson. Good to see you again, sir. Is Marina with you?" And Dan walks up to James Hudson and gleefully shakes his hand. The younger man's enthusiasm bubbles in his clear green eyes. He has functioned for many years as a kind of brother to the adopted Marina. But James Hudson recognized the first time he met Dan Smallwood that his love for Marina was something more than fraternal. Guardian would give much to avoid the words he must now speak, but they are not to be escaped. He tells him quickly, quietly, with as little pain as possible, but the anguish that floods Dan Smallwood's face speaks volumes. And we see Dan turn away from James Hudson, and he looks heartbroken, Shane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Walter Langowski looks very uncomfortable with the situation as he stands behind James Hudson. Today, Alpha Flight may well have saved the whole world, but just now, the world of one young man is ending. And that wraps up Alpha Flight Volume 1, Issue 4. Okay, Shane, what did you think?
I enjoy this book. This is before you start getting a lot of the backstories in the next couple issues. you start getting build-ups of all of the other characters' backgrounds and stuff. And I just enjoyed how they worked Sue and Namor into this story. And it makes perfect sense for Marina's character to be able to go off with Namor and find out more about herself. I don't know if Sue's necessary to the story because she saves everyone's butt, but like you could have almost had this written without that happening if and just have Namor save there. So I don't know. I enjoy this. For me, I like to grade everything out of 4. This is like a 3 out of 4 for me. So it's a good book. It's not a perfect book. There's some weird stuff in it, like the last 2 panels. But what about yourself?
I think that I would have enjoyed this a whole lot more if I had read Alpha Flight issues 2 and 3, as well as Fantastic Four 258 through 260 before reading this book, because as it is, it lacked a lot of context for me. That's not to say it's a bad book. It's just, I feel like I came in on the end of a conversation, basically.
I guess. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that if you come at it from not knowing, especially because like I said, when we first come back across Jean Marie, all those things that are on the ground, it's when she gets attacked, she decides to fly ahead of everyone else because as Aurora, she's reckless. And she decided to fly ahead of everyone else, and she got so far down this one corridor, it basically just became these crystals that just beat her into submission.
I mean, that would have been probably something to see. I tried to focus more on what was going on with Sue and Namor, obviously, because of us being a Fantastic Four show, and therefore the Marina subplot worked. But again, it just felt like I didn't know the entire story. But when we eventually, in a couple years, get to those Fantastic Four issues, we can always reference back to this episode.
Yeah,
So,
it's always there.
so our Fantastic Four of the week, I actually go first. So. My fantastic frame, I am going to go ahead and give to page 4, panel 3. And that is the transformation sequence where Snowbird goes from her bear form back to her humanoid form. I really like this panel because Byrne does this really marvelous job of displaying motion and metamorphosis. And he does it by relying almost entirely on a consistent warping of a basic shape. I love how the bear kind of shrinks and then grows. It just seems very realistic to me. It brought to mind, if you've ever seen an American Werewolf in London, it's almost the reverse of the werewolf transformation. It's pretty fantastic.
So when I first read it, it immediately to me brought up the you only really see it in shadow, but the Man Bat episode of Batman the animated series.
Something reminded you of Batman the Animated Series?
I know you're
I'm
that's like
shocked.
uh, that has to be a trope for me. Like some of my sayings, something reminding me of Batman the animated series. I realize this. I like Batman the animated series a lot.
It's a fantastic show. I just,
I'm slowly rewatching The Batman again. I try to
not as
watch
good.
one. Try to watch one episode on lunch. No, but when the theme changes, it gets wild once Batgirl comes into the show.
Gets a little 60s vibe to it. Anyway, Shane, what was your fantastic frame?
Mine was page 10, 11. I guess. It's the double page. It's panel 5, the one that goes across the 2 pages. When you first come across the ship Metropolis underneath the ice.
Is an incredibly detailed panel.
Uh,
I do really like it. Like I said, I thought it really evoked Mobius vibes.
so I really like the panel you did. Like I said, the only other panel I thought about taking instead of that was the Namor just grabbing a chunk of ice and throwing it over his head, because that's just the most Namor ridiculousness thing I can think of. But yeah, I ended up going with this because I just kept coming back. I kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and I'm like, I gotta pick something. I gotta settle. I gotta settle. And I was like, I'm going to settle on this because this is. this is just awesome. I find that I do that a lot. When there's really cool landscapes into a panel, I just end up getting wrapped in like I like being taken to a faraway place, and this is like taking you on a journey. Like it's like a DM set you up for a tale, and you're like, well, where am I going now? You know what I mean, I guess.
I can see it. What about your grim grumbling, Shane? What bothered you this week?
Well, I kind of touched on it, but the final two panels of the book where, he's kind of supposed to be her brother, but he kind of fell in love with her at the same time.
Yeah, that is page 20, panel 5, by the way, because guess what? That was also my grim grumbling for the issue. Because I don't like the idea of siblings, adopted or not, having romantic feelings between them. It's weird. It's gross. I no.
I'm definitely not a fan. I can tell you that much.
But then
Weird.
again, I don't live in Canada and John Byrne does. So any Canadian listeners who want to tell me that maybe some of these communities maybe have problems with this, please feel free to reach out. That's not meant to be a broad generalization about Canada. I just, I don't know what's going on with this.
I hope it's not like some kind of internal conflict he personally had.
I really don't want to speculate on it, quite frankly.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna not broach that again. So let's move on to Cosmic Cliffhanger.
Yep.
Much more positive.
So my cosmic cliffhanger was that double page spread that is page 18 on Marvel Unlimited. Just all of it. The explosion of the ship under the glacier with Sue, Namor, and Alpha Flight still inside, followed by that eerie stillness. Like that is mortal peril personified, so it got my vote.
That's a great one. I didn't even think about that one.
What did you think about Shane?
I went with page 15, panel 4. So that's when the rod starts pushing Marina up against her will, and then she's about to be broken into four different pieces. Because that is also like mortal peril in prime form.
It sure is. I can think of nothing. Well, I can think of few things that would be worse than being drawn and quartered. That is honestly something that makes my skin crawl. So yeah, talk about ratcheting up the suspense.
Yeah, that one. That was the one for me.
All right. Well, that leaves us with your choice for most fantastic player. Who was your MFP this week, Shane?
I actually ended up going with Sue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost made the argument for Snowbird. You could make an argument for Guardian slash North Star, but I went with Sue because in the beginning of the book, there's the when the laser cannon comes out and shoots the Fantastic Car, she shields herself and Namor in a bubble, so they get out of that. And then after the ship blows up, she forms another bubble to protect all of them so that they got out of that unscathed.
All right. Yeah, that's a very compelling argument. I had the same one. And I almost gave it to Sue, but I didn't because someone else did something that I thought was far, far more important in the grand scheme of things this issue.
Sure, sure. Who'd you give it to?
I gave it not to Guardian, but to James Hudson because he went out of his way to shut that incest thing down and really end the book on a high note. So good for James Hudson. I think we should all give him a round of applause. Shane is dying of a cold and has muted himself because he is laughing so hard that I put him into a coughing fit.
Oh, yeah, that was perfect.
So, folks, if you would like to read this story for yourself, you can find it a couple different places. If you're across the pond over in England, this was first reprinted by Marvel UK in Secret Wars number 10 and 11 in September of 1985. Trade paperback wise, it was first collected in Alpha Flight Classic Volume 1 in April of 2007. I personally read this story today out of the Fantastic Four by John Byrne Omnibus Volume 2 that was published in December of 2013. It is also in the Alpha Flight by John Byrne Omnibus from February of 2017. It is also included in Marvel Masterworks Fantastic Four Volume 24. You can also find it on Marvel Unlimited or in the back issue bin at your local comic book store. All right, Shane, we got to do it next week. It's Fantastic Four Volume 1 number 11, the debut of the Impossible Man.
All right.
I'm not a big Impossible Man guy, but we'll get through it.
No.
There's definitely fans out there who are going to be like, that's blasphemy. But every true believer is entitled to their opinion.
Yeah, not everyone likes the same villains.
Yeah. Sometimes, I don't even necessarily consider Impossible Man a villain. I consider him like a nuisance. It's like a Mitzias Pidlick.
He is a villain. Oh, he's in the rogues gallery. He's just also annoying.
And just a reminder, true believers, that your feedback is important to us. We would highly appreciate if you left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a comment or review on Spotify. Remember, subscribe to us on your preferred listening platform so we show up in your feed each and every week. We are on Facebook at the Fantastic Four Fancast. Highly recommend that if you have a Facebook account that you join the group where you can engage in FF related discussions and share Fantastic Four content. It's also going to become important when we start doing some varied episodes. You'll get a say in them by having a vote on a poll, and that's where we'll post them. We are also on Instagram at Fan4Fancast. That is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST. And finally, you can send us your feedback and suggestions by email at fan4fancast@gmail.com. Again, that is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST@gmail.com. Shane, do you have any final thoughts for the true believers on this, our April Fool's Day episode?
If you stayed till the end, thank you for staying along and playing the game with us. I know Alpha Flight isn't for everyone, but I truly enjoy Alpha Flight.
No, it wasn't a bad little story. I wish I would have known more going in. I probably would have enjoyed it more. So, but don't let my opinion take anything away from any of you out there. You might pick up this book and go, "This is key to Namor because he meets his future wife," which I mean, that's the truth. So, it is, kind of important to the narrative around the Submariner.
Yeah. Alpha Flight has a really weird vibe, and the book changes after this drastically. So, like, the first four issues are wildly different than the next six issues of Alpha Flight.
Yeah. And you
Because
can
you know
learn
what?
more about Alpha Flight by listening to the Alpha Flight fan cast, which is hosted by Shane and a bottle of Molson. So,
And some Sheriff's Regal. Do you know what happens in the next issue?
sure don't.
All right, do you want to know what happens in the next issue?
Do we have to talk about it now? Can we talk about it after I stop recording?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, Shane, thanks again for joining me this week. And thanks for recommending this book, I guess. I can't wait to do this again with you next week, and we hope that you will also join us again, true believers. For Shane Murray, I'm Nate Charles. Until next time, stay fantastic.